So we're not here to discuss the merits of the case. We are,
and this is not a voting process.
No,
we're not trying to reach consensus.
my problem is I'm a retired colonel, and I'm used to having people do what I want. And I don't need any input because I'm in charge.
It's not a Japanese American story.
Patience is not a question and answer period.
The Park Service is going to have to kind of double time to keep up with these It's Clarence Murrock.
their motto is go for broke. So that's what I said to the RN.
It's very controversial. Some people want to use one word, other people want to use
They want is what the actual definitions are. And Joel would want this accurate. I keep hearing this word interned. These people were not interned. They were revoked.
So we're not here to discuss the merits of this. I'm a retired colonel, and I'm used to having people do what I want. And I don't need any input because I'm...
It's really that's the government first. It's really that's the government first. It's really that's the government first. It's really that's
The reason we're meeting is because it's been directed to by Congress. So we're not here to discuss the merits of the case. We are here to discuss the merits or faults of the plan. And a study of alternatives has been prepared to meet the requirements of Public Law 107-363. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Superintendent Neil King, who is Superintendent of Minnesota.
Thanks, Reed. Well, we appreciate you all coming out this afternoon. We're going to have another meeting tonight at 7 o'clock. And then tomorrow, we're going to be meeting in Seattle at the Nisei Veterans Hall on 1212 Jackson Street. And the purpose of these meetings are for us to take a look at the work that we've been doing to try to come up with some management strategies. This process really began some years ago. I came here and attended my first meeting in 2001, and that meeting was to discuss with the community how they might move forward their desires to make some sort of a memorial that would commemorate the forced removal of the first internees in 1942. And so out of that first meeting in 2001, the community began to work with the congressional delegation, and a public law was passed that authorized this study. And that was passed in 2002, and we began the planning process in 2003. And the planning process charges us to look at different alternatives of how the site would be managed. So we're talking very broad general management concepts. We're not talking about details of exactly what would go on and who would say what and how we would actually execute the management of this. We're talking about who would be at the table and how those big pieces would fit together. And I think the vision statement that's in the front of this study, draft study, sort of summarizes it. So I'm just going to read. And this was put together by the planning team. This is what we adopted as our common vision. That we would establish sustainable partnerships for long-term preservation of the site and stories to ensure that all people understand and appreciate what happened to Nikkei residents, how the community of Bainbridge Island reacted to the forced removal of their citizens, and how those events remain relevant to current times. So that was, we all agreed, everyone that participated, that was what we wanted to try to have the end product be, is some sort of strategy that would support this. And so we have 3 strategies tonight, and they're each different. And we're going to explain those to you, and then hopefully get into a dialogue about what you think about them. And it's not so much that you want to support one, or you want to oppose one, or mix and match. It's really why you think it's important, why you think that we should manage these sites in a certain way, or partner with a certain group, or whatever your concerns are. But we have some things that are common to all of the alternatives, some things that are sort of givens, where they were either in place or they popped up and they seem to be important no matter what the final decisions are. And the first thing is that there would be no federal land ownership is being proposed. It would be community owned. And then the second thing is that we would approach the long-term management with partnerships. And I'm very selective about that word, partnership. To me, it means a long-term relationship that people are putting in an effort and getting something out of the effort. So it's a two-way street. And then the third is that and one of the tests of whether or not you could be on this planning team was that you had to learn to say that it was the Bainbridge Island World War II Nikkei Internment and Exclusion Memorial Committee that worked on this. And so we sort of shortened that to the Memorial Committee. But they have spent a lot of time and effort looking at the Eagle Dell dock site itself and how a memorial would fit on there. And so all of the management options that we've examined would accept that work product, that concept design that they have. And we would manage the site in the different configurations that we're proposing so that it would accommodate that. And so the partners, we're going to get into it in a minute, but there are the National Park Service. We really have 3 sites that are most directly involved, and that's our Seattle office, where we have a cultural resource specialist, Dr. Toothman, Dr. York, Anna's over there, and some others. And then we have Manzanar, National Historic Site in California. Alyssa Lynch is here from the staff who works down there. And then we have Minidoka Internment National Monument in Idaho. And the triangulation there is because the people from Bainbridge went to Manzanar, and then most of them went on to Minidoka, so we have that connection. And so the partners are those 3 National Park Service management units, the City of Bainbridge, the Bainbridge Island Historical Society, and the Bainbridge Island Parks and Recreation District. And then there's probably, and the Memorial Committee, and then there's probably others that would want to be involved. we see that as sort of the backbone, the foundation, the framework, whatever we're going to use, of the partnership that would make commitments to manage this site as per the direction that Congress might tell us to. And that's important for you to understand that this is a study that we present to the Secretary of Interior, and then the Secretary of Interior delivers it to Congress, and then Congress uses their wisdom to determine what to do. We don't have a say in that. We will have a preferred set of management actions by the time it gets to them. We'll say the National Park Service believes these to be the most efficient and effective management options for this site. But it's really will be up to Congress to take further action. The other thing is that we couldn't at this point tell you the exact relationship between these partners. Well, the city will do A, B, and C, and we don't really, that we'd have to wait and see what Congress recommends, and then we would have to develop a structure to move ahead under that sort of partnership. But certainly the National Park Service would take the lead in providing the technical expertise to preserve the site, and would also work to help interpret the site with the Historical Society and our other partners. So that's kind of the concept. Is there any questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'll bring you back in just a few minutes to go back and specifically introduce those members of the study partners, groups that are here. Right now, we'd like to talk about the significance of resource with Dr. Stephanie Toothman.
Good afternoon. I've met you before in various forays over here. Actually began in 2000 when I was invited to a meeting at the Filipino Community Hall to meet a number of people interested in telling the story of Bainbridge Island, and at that time had the privilege of meeting Walt Woodward and his daughter. So I felt an immediate connection, as did the Washington State Historic Preservation Officer, Allison Brooks, to the site and the other work that we were doing in the National Park Service to recognize sites associated with Japanese American history, and in particular, the story of the World War II internment. As a result of that initial meeting, we agreed in the Seattle office to contract with Dr. Gail Dombrowski at the University of Washington and several of her graduate students to continue to meet and interview with key members of the community and prepare what we call a National Historic Landmark form that documents the history and the character of a site that we want to consider evaluating for significance. We were fortunate in that in 1992, Congress had directed the National Park Service to carry out a nationwide study called Japanese Americans in World War II to document the experience of the Nikkei during World War II, not only the internment camps, but all of the sites associated with their experience. So I had a little bit of a mandate to take a look at this, and was glad to have the opportunity to work with people who had actually experienced the camp and who were very committed to commemorating the story that came out of that experience. So in terms of what you'll read in this study, in this section G, I believe it is, page 41 on significance, based on our research, based on the stories we heard, based on evaluating this site within the context of all the sites we looked at across the nation, we recommended that this site had national significance. It was the site, it was the area from which the first group of Japanese Americans and aliens, Nikkei, were forcibly evacuated from their homes under Executive Order 9066. That was signed by President Roosevelt in February 19, 1942. It was a decision that wasn't uniformly supported within the government, as we know now. It was a decision that wasn't, in terms of reading the specific language of the order, wasn't specifically targeted towards the Japanese. It simply authorized the Army to develop exclusion zones along the coast, but in fact, the result of it was the evacuation of more than 120,000 men, women, and children, both American citizens and aliens, from their homes against their will. So our recommendation is that the site is of national significance, not only for its association with the bigger story, because it was the first place, it's where they worked out the procedures for how they were going to accomplish the larger removal. And one of the reasons for the choice of Bainbridge, from which there already had been at least 50 members of the community removed as part of the general sweep out for Pearl Harbor. But Bainbridge was targeted because of its proximity to Fort Ward, which was one of the key listening posts for the intercept of intelligence messages from the Japanese, both leading up to the war and during the war. So there was military behind it. In terms of evaluating the character of the site, we recognize that there have been some significant changes to the site since it had been used as a pier, ferry dock to evacuate those citizens and other members of the community. It was our recommendation in the form that we initially prepared that although it had lost the pier, which was certainly a defining feature, that the Taylor Avenue site had retained much of the character associated with that day in 1942 when citizens of Bainbridge Island were removed from the island. So we recommended to our colleagues in Washington that this site be considered as a National Historic Landmark. And I'm going a little bit into this because I think there has been a little confusion. Their response was that they were concerned about how much physical integrity was left at the site. But they were very supportive, and there hasn't been any disagreement that this is a nationally significant story. And so with that response, I decided our work with the community in not focusing on preserving every remaining feature left or trying to restore it exactly to how it was that day, but to capture the essence of both the physical setting and the emotions that were experienced that day. And I think that we all agree that the memorial is a very effective way of doing that. So that's one reason why we think it's significant. The other reason, as we've moved through the study, has gained importance in and of itself, and that is, if you look at Manzanar, if you look at Minidoka, if you look at Hart Mountain or Poston or Topaz, they're all in very remote places. They're very difficult for most people to get to. Here we have at Bainbridge, and again based on research we did with Dr. Dombrowski and her students, we have a really unique opportunity to tell the story in a major metropolitan area, very accessible, in a community that still retains and values other aspects of Japanese American heritage, from the Fort Blakely site, where the first recorded Japanese immigrants worked at the mill in the late 19th century, to the post-war reincorporation back into the community. We have a really unique story, an opportunity to tell that story here in Bainbridge. So when we talk about the significance of the site, we not only talk about the day of removal and the impact of the community, but we're also very interested in the opportunity this presents to tell the significance of Japanese Americans, not only in this community, but in the before and after the war, because their history is more than that one experience, and it's important that it be put into a larger context. Any questions? If any of you, go ahead.
Yeah, the Dr. Dombrowski study, you have that here?
I don't have it with me. I think the Bainbridge Historical Society has a copy. You can also send me a message at Stephanie_Tuesman@nps.gov. You can get you a copy. What is posted on the web right now is is the Japanese American and World War II context statement that has been recommended to the Secretary of the Interior for designation, to be used for future designation of sites related to the internment experience, and that's on the nps.gov website. You can go in and research that, but I would be glad to provide anyone who wants it with a copy. Anybody else?
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. And I'd like to call Neil King back again to talk, recognize the study partners. And, here? Oh, I'm sorry. That, you know, it's that gray and green shirt. You
Well, we started off talking about partnerships, and you're going to hear more and more about that as this moves forward, because it really is an opportunity for the national parks to work with the people that are live here and started this effort and continue to sort of drive this. So we've asked each of them to just prepare, give you a little bit of a snapshot of how they think that this could move forward and how we can work together. And so we have the City of Bainbridge, the Memorial Committee, the Bainbridge Historical Society, and I don't know if anyone is here from the Parks and Rec. No. So the first person is looking at the senior planner for the City of Bainbridge.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming today. The city's been involved in this project probably many times. We partnered with the Memorial Committee and the Road Ends Committee, and we're looking at some sort of recognition of the occurrence of events at Taylor Avenue. And the city got a CDM grant to do some design work, because we have a well on the end of that road end, which the city is now going to move for part of the project. So it's been an honor being involved in the National Park Service review of it for national significance. And as we move through this whole process, it is all about partnerships. The city was also working with the Superfund site, which is directly adjacent to Taylor Avenue. And we joined together with the Memorial Committee and Park District, and we worked toward acquiring that former Superfund site for public park purposes for Joel Cricket Park and the Memorial event. And we have been successful in purchasing half the property, which was acquired in December of last year. And it includes all the property necessary for the memorial. So we're moving forward on that. We have assisted and joined in partnership again with the Memorial Committee, joint project with the development of the memorial. And we moved through getting a permit for actually multiple permits. This is a complicated project given the site that it's on. So we have shoreline permits, conditional use permits for, because it's located in a different zoning district. And then there's federal permits because it's on a shoreline property. And then we also have to worry about some of the other environments that are on there. There's a wetland, so we have some additional requirements because of our wetland regulations to protect that, as well as move the development. So there have been little hurdles here and there. We've moved through them, and we're on our way to now get national recognition and partner up again with the National Park Service. And of course, the Park District is not here. I'll just speak for them since they aren't here. They are a joint owner of the property with us as well, and have worked the project in the city. And so is the Friends of Pritchard Park in moving to acquire the entire 50-acre parcel. So they have been involved from the beginning of this project. And we'll be continuing to move toward phase 2 development as well on the memorial, hopefully in partnership with the National
question for you. You mentioned about partnerships. Without the National Park Service being a partner, of course this will continue.
Excuse me, we're just doing the presentations. It's not a question and answer period.
The last speaker was good.
No, what we'll do is we'll have public comments a little bit later, but we're only addressing the law right there.
Yeah, and all three of the alternatives, they include development of the memorial in either case.
The memorial we have up here is the chair is Dr. Kitamoto, and I've just been informed that that's incorrect. It's Clarence. Clarence Baraki is going to talk to you about the work they've been doing. When we started this project, one of the first things that I realized is that the Park Service was going to have to kind of double time to keep up with these guys. Because they're moving, they've got a vision, and so this 8 acres that is the memorial site has had a tremendous amount of work put into it, and it's through the efforts of Clarence and his group.
Thank you. Dr. Kitamoto will be here for the evening meeting. He's the president of the Japanese American community. And this was not the idea of the Japanese American community. About 6 years ago, the North Kitsap Bainbridge Island Interfaith Council came to our community and asked us, they would want to memorialize this. They wanted to do something to memorialize this moment in history. And that was a real difficult thing for the people of the Nisei generation, which is the second generation people, because that's really not their character. For one, you don't draw attention to yourself. You remain humble, you remain modest. It's being too prideful or boastful if you draw attention. And most importantly, though, it was a very difficult time for them. They felt a lot of pain, a lot of shame. They had a lot of discrimination during that process, so many people wanted to leave that behind. But this Interfaith Council came to our community and said, let's do something. The idea at that time was to simply put a plaque at the ferry terminal or something small like that. And I started working with the committee, and I said, well, I think we should do something a little more broad, because this was the first place in history this happened. History remembers those first places, as Stephanie pointed out. I often say, when you think of Kitty Hawk, or you think of Plymouth Rock, these places have a resonance. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You may not even know what Kitty Hawk is, but you know it was the Wright brothers. Well, this is one of America's history's first places. And so, in the spirit of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, which was an all-Japanese American unit that fought in Europe, they were the most decorated unit for men of any other unit in the history of the American military. Their motto was "Go for broke." So that's what I said should be our inspiration for our project. So coming from just a little plaque at the ferry terminal, I said, gosh, we've got the property. There's the road's still there, and let's start dreaming. And John Paul Jones, an Islander, a well-known architect, Jones that just studied at Reed works with, came to our group and started doing a lot of these designs. And he did these designs on his dime. He did this for us in millions of meetings. Someone asked me, when I came to this meeting today, how many times have you done a meeting or given a presentation? And I have no idea, but I'm thinking around several hundred, at least at this point, because it's been that important to me and very, very crucial. So what you see here is the culmination of 6 years of design work, working with the Interfaith Council. One of the partners that was briefly mentioned was the Friends of Richard Park, then the Wyckoff Acquisition Task Force. It's been tremendous. We wanted to acquire the property, and without the leadership of that group and the people who helped us get that together, a lot of public money in particular from state and federal, local, the city of Bainbridge Island, the open space bond, the $500,000 from that, it wouldn't be possible. I often say we have a beautiful plan, but if you don't have the land, you've just got a nice blueprint. You can't build your house. So acquire the land is the priority. So that's where we are in this exciting process. We're glad you all came out. Moving forward, right now we have $1 million from the state of Washington. Jim Mazzadara is here, donated some beautiful red cedar shingles that are on there. And I want to recognize Lily's back here and Joe Cadano. These are the people that I'm really inspired to help this become a reality. They're the ones who went through this. I didn't have to go through this. I'm very lucky I did. They're the ones who laid that foundation for me to make it happen. So thanks, Jim and Lily and Joe. Lily's in one of these pictures over here, so you'll see her. She was adorable then, and she's still adorable. Yeah, so thanks for coming out tonight.
When we look at these sites and start to think about, we need to figure out how we're going to interpret them. One of the things that I often ask people to think about planning these is, okay, 20 years from now, when all of the work is done, and somebody visits the site and they leave, what do you want them to remember? What's the takeaway? And the way we do a lot of that is through our interpretive efforts. And so I'm really pleased that we have the opportunity to try to partner with the local Bainbridge Island Historical Society, because there certainly is, it is part of the local historic fabric of this island, but it's also woven into the story nationally. This is a national story, and it's not a Japanese-American story. It's an American story. It's part of America's history. So we're really pleased to be able to try to work with all of these partners. And Teresa Cosgrove is the, I understand, new executive director for the Bainbridge Island Historical Society. And she's going to tell us how they're going to be involved.
Thank you, Mr. King. In fact, last week was my first week, so I'm basically carrying on the tradition of the people before me that went to many of these meetings. But it's interesting, the two speakers before me, Mr. King was talking about where do we want to be in 20 years from now. 20 years ago, I was at the Presidio Museum in San Francisco. We put together the first Go for Growth exhibit, and that became a traveling exhibit that the Smithsonian then took upon itself. So for me, it's really interesting to be here at this milestone. And also, you had talked about the Nisei and the different generations, and I appreciated you shedding that light on the different cultural differences. What I'd like to do as I talk, I'll refer to the Bainbridge Island Historical Society Museum as the Society. The Society has already completed a museum display on the internment. This permanent exhibit will complement what is being planned for the Eagledale Ferry Dock site. We would anticipate that this would be a first stop for memorial visitors. Our exhibit would show visitors the big picture before they view the memorial site. The Society anticipates sharing in the overall cooperative role in the historical interpretation of Bainbridge Island Japanese Americans and their memorial. Our organization will contribute to this partnership and accomplishment of mutual goals through the following. We will continue to collect and protect archival materials relative to internment of the Bainbridge Island Japanese Americans. We will continue to provide information relating to World War II experiences of the Bainbridge Island Nikkei, as well as to their history on the island prior to and after World War II, excuse me. And finally, we will continue to present the internment story from an island-wide perspective. In summary, I'd like to say that Alternative C is supported by the Society. This would designate the memorial site as the satellite unit of the Minidoka Internment This focus on interpretation, education, and outreach would be imperative to tell effectively the full story of the internment and incarceration of EK during World War II. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see that Perry snuck in on us with the Bainbridge Island Parks and Recreation District. He's a senior planner. Did you know we were going to call upon you, Perry?
No.
Would you mind, are you prepared to just give a little brief synopsis of the partnership from your end?
Well, the partnership has probably been one of the most meaningful experiences of my professional life in terms of what I've done for this community and not anywhere. And I think being part of the community in this endeavor has been just a terrific effort on the parts to come together to deal with painful industry as well as an ideal overall park site as well as a memorial area to tell the story to become part of the collective memory that's part of the country as well as the collective memory in this community as well and part of the healing process as well as the education process. So with that, I personally thank the community for allowing me to be part of that process professionally as well as personally.
Thank you to our partners for this. The next one, we're moving right along into the summary of alternatives. And with that, I'm very quickly going to take down this. And Anna Tamura, from the National Park Service, who's a landscape architect with the National Park Service, will explain in great detail what the alternatives are.
Talking about the alternatives, which is essentially the heart of this document. And the alternatives are on page 57. And I'm going to give a summary of the alternatives, but if you really want to know them better than what I'm presenting right now, you can read that section.
This is not the one.
I want to make clear also that we haven't selected any one of these as our preferred alternative yet, but we're intending to do that. And that's part of the public process that we're involved in today, is to help us select one of these alternatives as our preferred alternative. And perhaps there's things in management actions and these different alternatives that you like better than the other. You don't like the whole package, you just like particular items of them. You can tell us during our public comment portion of this presentation. So I'll go through. This is our first alternative, Alternative A, and under the National Environmental Policy Act, we're required to do compliance for this project. And under the compliance, we're required to have a no-action alternative, and that is Alternative A. Under our no-action alternative, there will be no designation of the site. There will be no federal designation of the site. And as well, there will be no federal funding for this site. The management, the long-term management of the site will be through the partnerships, through the local partnerships. The National Park Service would not be in the equation of partners for the site. Again, no federal funding for the development, operations, or staffing of the site. The site will be entirely staffed by locals and volunteers. One thing that would be available is technical assistance to the memorial, but it would the memorial would have to compete with other non-federal projects for this technical assistance. So this is the most scaled down, no federal action alternative out of the three. Alternative B is our next alternative. It's called the affiliated area, and under this one, it would be designated. It would have to be designated by Congress as an affiliated area of the National Park System. This one would be designated as an affiliated area because of its historical connections to Myanmar and Minidoka. this one, it would be a partnership agreement among the local partnerships, but the National Park Service would be added to the partners. It would have to be managed as a unit of National Park System, operationally, and with the same standards of the National Park System. For funding, this one, the National Park Service could contribute up to $300,000 on a one-time basis for the development of exhibits and interpretive media for this project. Operations would have to be taken care of by the local partners, and so the National Park Service would not contribute to the operations of the site. Staffing would be local staffing. There would be no National Park Service staff for the project. And under this one, it would be eligible for National Park Service technical assistance. Moving along. Alternative C is the most robust in terms of federal involvement in this project. Under this one, it would become a satellite unit of Minidoka Interment National Monument. And the reason that that has been chosen instead of Manzanar is because Minidoka is closer, and it's easier for the National Park Service to manage a satellite unit of Minidoka rather than in Southern California, Manzanar. Under this one, it would be a partnership agreement again among the local partnerships. National Park Service would be involved. Under this one, it would be interpretively linked, obviously, to Manzanar and Minidoka. And a unit of the local government, likely the Parks and Rec District or the City of Bainbridge, would manage the day-to-day operations, including maintenance of the site. For funding, development costs, the National Park Service could contribute up to $400,000 for the Phase 2 development of the memorial. Also, the National Park Service could use an agreement of matching 50-50 share with non-federal partners for infrastructure items up to $700,000. For operations costs, the National Park Service could contribute up to $200,000 annually, and that funding would support staffing for the memorial. It would likely support one permanent full-time staff, and then additionally up to 3 seasonal staff. Staffing for this alternative, the MPS staffing for this alternative, that person or those people could be located out of our Seattle office at the Klondike Gold Rush National Historic Park. And the National Park Service staffing for the site would augment the local staffing and volunteers for the site. And under this one, they're eligible to request technical assistance. This one, they're eligible to get some technical assistance. Under this one, they could get technical assistance with funding as well. And those are the 3 alternatives we're going to discuss in more detail in the section of the presentation.
Thank you, Anna. By the way, each one of the stations, I will talk about that in a couple of minutes, we have copies of the same thing you've seen here, so you'll be able to spend some more time. Now I have to explain something to you all, and that's an explanation of the public participation process. It's my problem with our firm, and I'm used to having people do what I want. And I don't need any input because I'm in charge. Now, when I started working with Jones & Jones, I very quickly found out that it didn't mean a thing to be a retired colonel, and I better learn how to work with the public. So, with that information, I want to just, before I start my presentation, please sign in. I'd love for you to sign in. And do you all have copies? These are the programs. We pass those around. Now you should be very pleased that Jarvis has learned something quite quickly. And that's our public participation. We're going to break into 3 groups at these various tables. We're going to have a representative there of the planning team, and we'll have a scribe too. We may have to draft one scribe. We'll take care of that. And we have a process that I'd like to have you go through in which you will address those things in the plan. So about the significance, the suitability, the feasibility, the management criteria, the parts of the management criteria, and discuss the various alternatives. We're just going to address, again, we're here to address the alternatives, because we have to take this information back to our office, and I'll explain that down here in the end of the full participation. What's really going to happen? Where do we go from here? We have a sheet that will show you what's going on. So there's no way, I'm not going to break it up alphabetically or by height or anything like that, but I'd like to have you just mill around for a couple of minutes and gravitate towards one station over there, one station here, and one station here, and then we will see how many seats we need and move the seats over. So with that, yes.
Excuse me, Colonel.
What?
All right, sir. Is there going to be a time for public comment afterwards to all of us, or I'm not quite clear on the...
What we're going to ask you to do is each group will report back to the group as a whole what their discussion is or what their discussion points.
So we will all gather together again before this session is over.
Yes, we will.
And there will be an opportunity for public comment.
Yes. And in the newsletter, it's really important we have written comments, because one of my jobs is to analyze the written comments. Sure. And you can take your time and express things a lot better to in writing. I'm not really quick on my feet, but I can certainly sit and read things and understand.
How do we do that?
So yes.
I'll just say my comments for the general all
Comments which will address A, B, or C.
Well, you really should provide the comments in your group, because what we want to do is capture what the concerns are, and this is not a voting process.
No, I understand.
We're not trying
It's a planning
to
process.
we're not trying to reach consensus. We want to know what you think about each one of these alternatives, and not just that you're for it or against it, but why you think it would work or not work or whatever they are. And we may not have time at the end to do a summary, so I would encourage you to make your comments in the groups.
Well, I had two general comments which applied to everything. I didn't know when would be the appropriate time. Now, okay, take me just a moment. I'm Jack Klum, World War II veteran, and this project is rather close to my heart. I knew Joel Pritchard from the time he was in the cradle of Liverpool, all through his life, because we were next door neighbors in Pleasant Beach. And I was also personally involved in the relocation of Japanese from the island here, so my heart is close to that. I think it's basically a wonderful idea to memorialize this, but over the years, we have gotten a little careless of what we do and what we say. I keep hearing this word internment. These people were not interned; they were relocated, and it's a different.
We're not going to debate the issues. We want to look at how we want to manage these sites.
It's nomenclature, which applies to everything, and the nomenclature of relocation, internment by the Geneva Conventions is an entirely different process. And I want to bring this up to your mind.
There is no agreement on terminology. It's very controversial. Some people want to use one word, other people want to use
What they want is what the actual definitions are. And Joel would want this accurate.
We're really going to try to look at how we're going to manage these sites. There simply is no way we can debate all of these issues.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up to get thinking along that line, and now I'm perfectly willing to sit down and work with the nitty-gritty details to help make this a wonderful memorial. That's great.
Thank you.
So I would like to call your attention and all of your attention to, as you open the study, there is a discussion of terminology, because it is easy that we have long debates, orally, writing, and whatever will continue. And I think it's a very good expression of where we're coming from after going through the planning processes for Manzanar and Minidoka in terms of terminology. So that's not to say, cut you off, but to point out that for the purposes of today, it might be helpful for you as going through groups as one to discuss this initially, to take a look in that opening page. That's the thing on the left-hand side is a discussion on terminology and what the Park Service's view is.
go to our tables. If we have too many at one table, or at three tables, we have one additional table we'll set up. So that's great. Why don't we just take a break for...
Yeah.